everybody, I'm Kristen. I'm your moderator for this session. I think I got everyone's issues and then she came back to me already. Okay, this is Susan Wilson. She's an associate professor and chair of the Recreation, Parks, and Leisure Studies at SUNY Portland. Susan has spent the last 22 years in the SUNY system advocating for herself, colleagues, and the program. Susan is also a Portland County legislator advocating for a living wage for all county workers. She is the daughter of Catherine Wilson, who is currently struggling with Alzheimer's and spent last week advocating for both assisted care and justice. Welcome.
Thank you. So I started with that to just let you understand that I'm an advocate in a lot of different roles. I'm a politician, somehow, and I'm a politician. I'm a daughter. We're transitioning my mom. She's in hospice now, and so and then I'm also been working in the SUNY system, which, if you know anything about the SUNY system, if you know about the state system, most of you all, if you shut up, then you die, right? So I just keep talking. But one of the reasons that I did that is to just let you know that my advocacy changes with who I'm dealing with, right? So sometimes I'm dealing with constituents, and they want to know, for example, why we're spending their money, right? And sometimes I'm dealing with individuals who don't necessarily, one of my big issues right now is to get DSS and mental health workers in our county a decent wage. And when I'm dealing with other people on the legislature who don't believe in that, I've got to use a different tactic. When I'm dealing, last week when I was home or in Washington State with my mom, my sister kept calling me and we had this like tag team thing. So she's the mouthpiece and I am the eyes. So I'm noticing what's going on, noticing all the things that are going on. I'm telling my sister, and she's doing the advocacy. So I'm talking differently to people who are coming in. So your advocacy changes. This presentation, my friend Jen Hitton and I did this at Southeast TR Symposium, 2018. We did this presentation, and then it became a newsletter article for ACTRA. And one of the things that we tried to do is just make this user-friendly. So I'm thanking Jen in this kind of opening for helping me out, however many years ago. I've changed a few things, and I just changed a whole bunch of things before I walked in here, so bear with me. So the learning objectives, which by the way I didn't have on here until about 10 minutes ago. By the end of this presentation, participants will be able to articulate specific reasons for advocating the profession of recreation therapy, identify at least 3 aspects used when analyzing an audience, and to be able to develop at least 3 major points they will include in their own elevator speech. So, why do you think an elevator speech is important?
It's a quick foundation of what you want or what it's about.
Yeah. Quick, easy foundation of what you want. And that, the term elevator speech literally comes from, it should last as long as the elevator ride. Which here, if it lasted as long as you were waiting for the elevator, it'd be like a 3-hour conversation. But the ride is a little bit quicker. So the elevator speech is important. It's important for us all to have an elevator speech. It's important for us to be able to, when someone asks us about our profession, our department, whatever thing that we're passionate about at that moment, that we have something short and sweet. And one of the things that, when we were doing this presentation, that came up was this idea that people are going to have conversations about recreation therapy or therapeutic recreation. They're going to have conversations. You may be starting a conversation that somebody else finishes. right? So it may not be that you're going to see this person again, but you're planting a seed. And that is helping to further the field. So why do I need an elevator speech? Originally, when we were doing this presentation, we HR 626 was in the House, which was adding therapeutic recreation to the 3-hour rule, meaning so 3-hour rule. I did my students. The 3-hour rule is that you get speech, OT, PT speech.
Rehab counseling.
Rehab counsel. It's I always say orthotics, but it's not. It's what? Thank you. Orthopedic or prosthetic. Sometimes. You have to have in a 7-day period, at least 5 of those days you need to have the therapy, because they have to have 15 hours per that 5-day period. So we were talking about it in that context of talking to legislators. So, and I'm not being very articulate here, but let me just say this. I believe in licensure. I believe that we have to have licensure in New York State. Don't get me wrong about that. But my viewpoint is a little different than some people. I feel like we need to really work on the 3-hour rule, and then licensure will follow. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So when I talk about licensure and talk about reimbursement, they're kind of the same thing for me. So it's considered a chicken and egg situation. Will licensure bring reimbursement, or will reimbursement bring licensure? And everybody has their opinion on this, right? I just happen to believe that reimbursement will bring licensure. So you can flip that any way you want. Just flip it in your head. The other is professionalism. Being able to communicate our role and advocate for our profession is one of the most important things that we do. It really, really is. And it's also, we'll talk about this in a second, it's also something that the job analysis says that a lot of people are already doing. So a word about licensure. The primary purpose of licensure is to protect consumers, ensuring that they will receive quality recreation therapy services. For therapists, licensure will not only increase professionalism, but provide a means for removing unqualified practitioners. It should have a space there, but we will also meet the growing mandate from organizations to hire only licensed therapeutic recreation, recreation therapists, and allow therapists to have their services covered by insurance reimbursement. I'm about to get my 30-year plan. Well, I have it. It's coming in the mail. I actually got my. I've been at 32 years. I've been a rec therapist for 32 years. I probably will be a rec therapist for another 12. 50. So at 67, I can retire. So I'll probably be a rec therapist for another 12. I was just talking to Sue Lance. I'll probably be another rec therapist for 10 years out. Right? I'll probably be a rec therapist for the majority of my life. The one thing I would love to see is for us to become licensed. But it's not going to happen unless we pick up the gauntlet, unless we do the things that we need to do. And one of those is to educate people. I love this field. I embrace it. I teach it. I walk around my campus and I say to students, "What's your major?" And they tell me it's education. And I go, "Why?" You know, there's a major called therapeutic recreation, and you can be in it and you can play. I don't say play, but you do all these things for a living. And then they look at me like I'm strange and say, like, "Susan," I get my coffee now, right? So that advocacy, that piece of us really has to become part of our passion. 2014, so this is the last job analysis. If you were at the opening session, you heard Ann talk about the job analysis is finished, they're waiting for data, so this will be updated. But in 2014, which is the last job analysis we did, professionalism was ranked as the top knowledge area needed by therapeutic recreation specialists. Professionalism, professional boundaries, professional appearance, professional behavior, but also professional communication requires us to communicate with our clients, other professionals, and the public, the nature and significance of our service. I was really honored last year to do the keynote, and I was really honored because I took it as an opportunity to thank you for what you did during COVID. And we have done a great job in the last few years. How long have we been in COVID? 20, 25 years? All right. So in the last couple of years, we've done an amazing job of pitching in, but now you know what we got to start doing? Advocating for ourselves and bragging about it. Ann said it the other day, we don't brag enough about ourselves. We brag about our program, or not, our people, and all those kinds of things. We need to advocate and say, this is the reason that therapeutic recreation exists. So this is now becoming kind of like my thing, I think, to just tell people what we do and how great we are. So these are the top knowledge areas. This actually comes from NCTRC. Professionalism, this is out of a 4-point scale. 3.7 was the average people, this is the average amount. The average amount of importance that a rec therapist gives a certain area. Professionalism, 3.7 out of 4. Cognitive developments and disorders, related impairments, 3.6. Social assessment, 3.6. Selection program, 3.6. Advocacy for people served, 3.5. If you notice that people are saying that this is the top thing that we do. This is down a little lower than I'd like it to be, but this is more, to most therapists, this is more important in their job than selection of programs and assessment, and then cognitive developmental orders and related. So it's a very important aspect of what we're doing. So it all starts with this. It all starts with us asking ourselves this question. How do you want others to see therapeutic recreation? And what Annette wants people to see, and what Katie wants people to see, and what all of you, or Orlando wants people to see, is going to be different based on your population, based on who you're talking to, based on, I shouldn't say it's different, it should be the same. Based on all those things, yours is going to be a little different from individuals, but your grounding is going to be similar. So how do you want other people to see us? What's your dream?
Knowledgeable.
Knowledgeable.
Like to take us seriously. Take us seriously.
Take us seriously, yeah.
I'd like people to know about it. Like, it's not as, like, every person, if I tell them my job, I have to do it. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
discouraging.
I was at an airport last week and was talking to somebody, and they asked me what I did, and I said, I'm a rec therapist. I teach rec therapy, or recreation therapy, or therapy recreation, I can't remember what he said. And they said, no, really, what do you do? And so I didn't have any business cards. I wanted to do that for some business cards. Let's get on our website. But sometimes it's just tiring, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to be a lawyer. I mean, people hate them, but they know what to do. They know what to do, right? And so sometimes it is tiring. So it would be nice to be able to do that.
I don't have it anymore because it's just worn beyond recognition, but I got a shirt from Utica College where I graduated from, and it had like almost a full my back was filled with what is therapeutic recreation. And I can't remember how many times people have like, I've noticed people, following me as I turn because they're reading my shirt. They don't.
The old benefits-based, I went to, got my PhD in the late 90s in the benefits-based research that was being done and talking about all the benefits of TR and what, and general recreation and what they did. Yeah, and people, my mentor, my doctoral advisor, is a guy by the name of Fran McGuire. And Fran McGuire at Clemson, people don't ask you what your major is. They ask you what kind of engineering are you, right? It's an engineering school. So they come up to you and students that go, well, what kind of engineering are you? Well, our department, when I was getting my doctorate, it still is called Parks, Recreation and Leisure Management, right? So the acronym, what is wrong? The acronym is PRTM, right? Which is also translated to Party Right Through May. Right? That's what you come up against immediately. Somebody says, what major, or I'm PRTM, or what? Oh, Party Right Through May. And I got administrators that would say that to me, right? And faculty members from other departments, oh, Party Right Through May, right? Like, no. And Fran came up with this, he used to say this a lot. He said, you're gonna go home and your roommate is gonna ask you what you do today. And you're gonna say, you're gonna tell them, and you're gonna say to your roommate, what'd you do today? And they said, oh, I've learned how to fix bridges, or I learned how to do whatever, and you're gonna turn to them and say, well, I build people and you build bridges. Whose job is more? Right? And that's where we need to get to. We need to get to, I love Anne talking about a sense of pride we have with each other. We have for our profession. For years I would come to nice and people, nobody gives me any credit in my agency. I'm like, keep doing the job, keep doing it well. That's my best advice to you. So, grounding our philosophy. Our philosophy determines our actions, or it should. Philosophy should be a touchstone. What we believe about therapeutic recreation should be our touchstone, and every decision that we make should be based on that touchstone. If we believe that recreation is the most important thing in the world, if we believe that everybody has the right to leisure, then that should be our touchstone. And every time we make a decision, we should fall back and say, I believe that everybody should have a right to leisure. It's made up of a set of learned beliefs and values that direct behavior and attitudes. A lot of times we think about philosophy as this kind of dusty thing, it might be in a book. We have to dust the book off in order to see what the philosophy is. But it's not. It should be something that is in your back pocket. It should be that little piece of paper that reminds you of everything in your back pocket every day. Philosophy may be best understood not as a subject, but as an activity by which one seeks an understanding of every fact, fiction, and feeling, and all the relationships among them. So, when we are talking about our philosophy, I can't leave out who I am. I have a nephew who has autism. I have a mom who has Alzheimer's. I can't walk away from that in my life. It's part of me, right? It's the feeling that I get. It's the importance of what is needed, right? And that has to be part of what I do. So and I'm not going to take a lot of time with this, but just for just a quick minute, write down 3 or 4 things that you say kind of ground you, that you would kind of put in your philosophy. And it doesn't have to be just one word. So you could write, leisure building loan. You could write, recreation is important for all. Just write 3 or 4 things that you think of when you think about your field. I really don't think they've got rid of this carpet in 20 years. They really need a new carpet. I actually put the carpet up on Facebook yesterday for people who weren't here and said, where am I? Based on that carpet. Does anyone want to just shout out something that you put on there? Quality of life. Oh, okay.
Person-centered care. Person-centered care.
Person-centered care.
Treating the whole person.
Treating the whole person. There's sound bites, right? They come back to you. Sometimes when you're trying to figure out what it is and why it is that you do what you do, that comes back to you. I'm a quality of life agent. I'm important. I'm person-centered, right? I think different than a nurse or a doctor or a social worker. And one of the main points that we need to think about, and when I talk to students, I tell them this, is you're going to be thinking different in a medical model. So you're gonna have people who are gonna be thinking completely different than you, and you're gonna be advocating for quality of life. Nobody else is thinking, people are thinking about it, but not as a total profession thinking about that, right? And so that's going to have to drive you. That's going to have to make you understand why it is you do what you do. So philosophy, relationship between recreational therapy and therapeutic recreation, I kind of use them both interchangeably. Therapeutic recreation is the field, recreational therapy is the practice. Recreation therapists are the practitioners, and the CTRS is the qualified provider. Why do you come to conferences? To be qualified.
That's validating.
Validating.
To improve your ability to be a better practitioner.
Yes. Now here's a question. If I was to ask that question of people who work here, and nothing against people who work here, because people are here for a variety of reasons, but people who never go to conferences or go very infrequently, what might be the #1 reason that they go to conferences? CEUs. Get my CEUs. And so we need to realize that we're actually coming to conferences, we're actually doing the things we are because we want to be the best professional that we can. It's not enough to be qualified. I keep referring back to Anne, but her presentation was amazing. And one of the things that she said that I always think about is this idea of just lost it. Shoot, it was good, and then I said that, and then you all went, and then let's just.
Why become a CTR?
Why become a CTR? Oh, I know. This idea of how we why we continue to do what we continue to do, right? Oh, it'll come to me. I'm sorry. That literally just left me. Your focus will depend on your clientele and setting, but all like RTs or TRs or whatever you want to call us do active treatment. We all do active treatment. Inpatient substance abuse is the example. They do creative expression. They do alcohol and drug education. They do leisure education. They do relaxation techniques. They do fitness skills. Those of you who are not at substance use disorder agencies, do you still do this stuff? Yeah, right? So we're all doing active therapy, residential dementia care, brain fitness, sensory conductors, trivia games, reminiscence, duet bike. This is actually a program down, Jen is at Cullowhee, North Carolina, and yes, it is as small as it indicates, Cullowhee. And they have a great program there in their senior center where they lend out bikes for family members and people with dementia. And they're able to ride around the town, and then they do it. So it's just kind of a really nice kind of thing. But these are things that we take and that we do in a lot of different places. We're all active therapists. Your end product is going to differ based on the model you're using. Y'all remember models? You ever think about them again? I'm right in the middle of teaching models right now. You think about them? Getting ready for a presentation.
When I have a student, maybe to know.
Yeah. I've changed my computer so it recognizes the word leisureability because it's kind of my go-to. But models kind of ground you, and a lot of us I think have Frankenstein models, right? We take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that. But the end product is going to differ based on the model that you're using. So the end product will be improved independence, satisfying leisure, functioning that affects quality of life. That's for the leisure building model. Health protection, health promotion, decreasing barriers to help increase high levels of health and wellness, leading to self-actualization. So there are a little bit of the difference, but they all come back to that quality. All roads lead back there. Just a little bit of difference. So my elevator speech is going to be different than your elevator speech, but we're going to kind of be able to talk to our stakeholders about our field and how it's important. All allied and health human services fields have different theories, models, and philosophical standings. It's important that you can articulate yours in a way that's understandable and desirable for your stakeholder. The way I talk to politicians is not the same way that I talk to the direct care person, because they know more, not the politician. The direct care person knows more. They have a better understanding of what I'm talking about, right? So it's important for us to be able to articulate what it is our field does based on that. So we're going to talk a little bit about audience analysis, and you're going to need some friends for this. So, and this says, who is your stakeholder? But let's start with this. Who are our potential stakeholders? So in little groups of 3, possibly 4 at the longest, who are our potential stakeholders? So if you're here with somebody in your agency, you might talk about your agency. You might talk about talking to a client. You might talk about who are your stakeholders. Just come up with a list of people that you may have. What are you doing over here?
Never mind.
So, and I'm kind of doing this also, I'm telling you to do, but clients being one of them, administrators being another one. What'd you say? Oh, somebody said, did I hear grad students?
No, I said.
Families being another one. Residents. Who else? You said you work for the state, so
The state.
whoever the state is, right? The state.
Yeah, and we all refer to it as the state.
Yeah.
Taxpayers.
Yeah, taxpayers, politicians. Here's one this is my favorite all-time stakeholder. The receptionist in your facility. Your receptionist is a stakeholder, and I can tell you from personal experience that I'll get students who come in my office and they'll be crying because it's internship time and they all cry during internship time. And they'll be crying and they'll go, they'll go, I can't get an internship, I called such and such, and they don't have a rec therapist there. And I go, where? And they'll say the name of the place. And I go, well, yeah, they do, and it's Katie. Right. It's Kate, it's Kate. I know Kate, and here's her number, here's her stuff. And they go, well, I called the main number.
Don't ever call the main
But the
number.
students all do this. They call the main number and go, can I have the recreation therapy department? And a lot of times it's not the recreation therapy department, and sometimes they get connected to the respiratory therapy department. Right? But some of you all have a little bit different names. Some of you all have different titles. Can I talk to your CTRS? That's, don't even, yeah. Right? But that is actually a stakeholder, right? That person is a stakeholder. If you get that person on your side and they get that number and they say, oh yeah, I know, yeah, let me direct you to Annette, right? Let me direct you to Annette. Or let me direct you to so-and-so. And this is the other thing, you all are never in your offices.
No, we're not. because
No,
we're
you're not.
people.
Exactly. So, well, the students are going, I called 8 times.
Did you leave a message?
Thank you.
Leave a message.
This is like the fifth time I called you. It's the first time I've heard your voice.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Well, I like it when they say, this is the 5th time I've called you, and I have on my office phone a little missed calls. I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
nope,
Lie.
liar. Nope, it's not the 5th time you've called me.
They also call like 5 times in 2 hours.
Yeah,
And then they want to know, they say, well, you didn't call me back. It's like, well, I wasn't, well.
so it's very handy sometimes when you have somebody that works at the front desk or the switchboard or whatever you want to call it, who knows your cell. That can be.
Colleges all know to refer students to facilities and access.
Mhm.
And they give them their direct emails and phone numbers.
So they don't get
Nice.
it.
That's how.
We have this thing at Cortland where students go, I'm going to Colorado. And you go, okay, well, we don't have any affiliation agreements, but we can get one. So they'll start calling and, yeah, it's a very hard.
I had to do that for my internship.
Yeah, with the COVID and all that kind of stuff, and I apologize, and it's not us, and just, if we believe it or not, we are just as frustrated with the whole process as everybody else.
You know
But-
what else I think is a stakeholder too? I know in our facility, the marketing.
Yes, huge. And they all love you around the time it's time to take pictures, don't they?
They
They
sure
all
do.
love you around that time, but and you have them as a captive audience for as long as it takes them to take those pictures, let's talk to them about what we do.
In my particular, I don't even want to say, yeah, probably in DBS, it's the psychologists, like trying to convince the psychologists that this is important, and yes, there's all this treatment stuff, but this matters. Like,
Uh-huh.
and being super restrictive is not gonna get you the results that you want, so trying to get them to understand the importance of that, because there's an element of like, oh, it's these people who do inclusions and they don't really matter.
Yeah.
But, you know, the BSP isn't the end all be all. You know, the behavior plan is not, it's not the only thing. So like trying to convince everyone on the team that stuff matters can be really, really tough.
Yeah. And like I said, it's an ongoing conversation, right? So I may have this conversation with somebody, and we have a really good president at Portland. He is a nice guy, and he really does like try to understand stuff, but he forgets a lot. And then he just, says, like, when anybody say this to him, but then he says, oh, this is what recreation is, he actually sometimes forgets about therapeutic recreation and lumps us in with activity or with adaptive phys ed. So every time I get in his face, every time I'm in a situation, we just had a job opening and we went up to his office, the candidate went up to his office, I had that 5 minutes where he comes out of his office and says something to me, and I have 5 minutes, it's not even 5 minutes, I probably have a minute and a half to say, this is what's going on in my department. And I'm getting better at that, but it sometimes feels, I don't know, it just sometimes feels like a little cheap. It feels a little used car-ish, right? And so you have a list. think of one, and you can do this together, you can do it as a group. You can do this together, you can do it. You can do this together, you can do it alone. Think of one person on that list, or one constituent, one stakeholder, one category whom you'd like to consider for the rest of this. So if you want to work on your speech for your administrators, keep that in mind. If you want to work on it for your clientele, keep that in mind. And we're just going to go through some basic understanding of how to construct an elevator speech. The first thing you have to know is, who are you pitching to? Who is it that you're talking to? And a good understanding of, I'm in county government, so we don't have like staff and all that kind of stuff. I just show up and vote. Well, I do more than that, but so we don't have staff for all that. But if I want to get something through to my legislator, who I absolutely adore, my state legislator, Anna Kellis. You're from Michigan. You have it. Are you from Michigan?
Long Island.
Oh, shit. I don't know why I thought you were from Michigan. But anyway, so if I want to talk to Anna, I'll talk to her. She's very nice. She's very open. But who I really want to get to is her staff. Because she's just doing the meet and greet and that kind of thing. And she's wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's her staff who's going to go, you know what, when we talk to that person, these are some things that they talk about. So when you look at who you're pitching to, what kind of stakeholder are they? So if I'm talking to an administrator, and Ann said this, are they a numbers administrator, or are they a quality of life administrator? Our president is definitely a quality of life guy, but he does like the numbers, right? So you kind of have to walk that line of what they want. You consider the following 10 questions when adapting your topics and messages to a particular audience. So this actually, what do you and your audience have in common? So when you're talking to family members, what do you and those stakeholders have in common?
You want the best for
You want the best for their person,
yeah.
but you also have family, right? And so as I'm talking to the physical therapist who came into my mom's last week, I'm having this conversation about services and all these kinds of things that is going on and what we want. And I say, I'm sure you want the best for your mom too, right? Whoever that is has a daughter or has a mother or father or something, and they can relate to you, right? So we take that moment and figure out, what do we have? And we have something in common with a lot of people, and taking that time, 2 or 3 minutes, to say to your front desk person, what's important to you? What kind of recreation do you like to do? I like to do log rolling. Log rolling is my favorite demonstration activity. Why do you like to do log rolling? I like to do it for these reasons. Do you find when you log roll, your legs are more, blah, blah, blah? We're connecting ourselves with them. How are you and your audience different? Right? So in my advocacy for higher wages for our county right now, sometimes I get to these people who are like, well, they make enough money. And I'm like, really? You really think that? And I mean, it's just something I can't fathom, because it's not where I am. So I have to think to myself, like, what does this person want? We have one person who just wants numbers. We want one person who wants stories. We want one person, all these kinds of differences. So how are we different? What ideas or examples in your speech might your audience identify with? When I'm teaching, some of you, anyone in your program, except for Annette, a million, but you will understand this next part. When I'm teaching, oftentimes I refer to the dark horse. See, you know what I'm talking about. I refer to the dark horse because I want to meet them where they are. So what I give is an example. So if I talk about one of the things I say a lot is that the role of a therapeutic recreation specialist is to work themselves out of the job, right? And so not too long, but we talk about. So, you know, we want somebody to have an independent leisure lifestyle. So let's say this class was about meeting your mate. And then I usually say if it was that topic, I would probably not be teaching it because I'm not an expert in that area. But I would probably say, and so I said, but when do we go down the dark horse? You know, we practice these things in class, and then every time you go down the dark horse, I go with you. And then, oh, that'd be so cool. I go, no, because I got to be there at 8 and leave at 8:15, right? I'm not a good wing person, right? But this idea of and they kind of grasp onto that, and think about, yeah, if I was trying to pick somebody up in a bar, I wouldn't want my professor with me, right? And so it's meeting where they are. And listen, the other thing is the dark horse smells. It does smell. Yeah. How can your topic or information benefit your audience? I know who they are. I know a little bit about who they are. I know about how they fit in. How can they benefit your audience? Jackie Dyke, who's in the student session right now, is a colleague of mine. She has an amazing formula when she was working for Syracuse Behavioral Health, an amazing formula to look at programs and how much they cost, and then look at the benefit that they get from those programs. So they say something like, if people who participate in leisure ed have less chance of recidivism in the first year. Right, so she does that statistic, and then she says, and the leisure ed program costs you $1.75 per person per session. She goes to well, she went not anymore. She works at Cortland now. She goes to her administrator in Irvington and says, "This is why you have to fund this." I go to the physical therapist and I say, "If I do what I do, your person is going to be out of therapy more or in less time." And here's how I know that. Evidence-based practice, folks. We gotta get on the bandwagon, right? We gotta get on the bandwagon. We've been telling nice, cute stories for too long, and I'm part of that problem. How can your audience use the information? You can go back, you're an administrator, you can go back and talk to your board of directors. This is why we need this program. You're a family member, right? And I can go back and talk about recreation and leisure and things that we can do. The amount of anxiety that I see now on a day-to-day basis, and I'm sure you all do, but as students, it has ramped up beyond belief, right? This anxiety. And if I was talking to their family member, I would be like, if you do these kinds of things, these are ways that you can help with that anxiety, right? So recreation, those activities, you know, if you find that they're getting anxious, you might want to get them out, get them moving, get them doing whatever it is that they do, or have a journal or whatever. How will the information help your audience? And what's your audience's amount of interest or attitude towards your topic? Not everybody cares about us, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So we need to make sure that when and I have a slide in a minute, that when we're talking to somebody, we don't become that gushing parent, right? The gushing parent of, let me show you, I'm a dog parent, so I'm like, let me show you 18 pictures of my dog, right? And you have to see this one because his head is slightly more tilted, right? You have to see that. And he's just adorable, right? But there are going to be some people where you're going to lose them because they're too busy to talk to you. So planting that seed is all we're talking about doing. How will your audience compensate for your, or how will you address or compensate for your audience's amount of interest or latitude towards your topic? Some people, it is finding that common connection. Some people, it's talking about dollars and cents. Some people, whatever it is, how are you going to be able to say, this is why this is, how are you going to hook them? And what does your audience know about your topic? What might they want to know or need to know about your topic? So making sure, when does this end? 3 o'clock? Making sure that when you're talking to an individual, when you're talking to that stakeholder, right, that you're using your elevator speech, that you are honing in on what is important in terms of that particular day, right? So what is important on this particular day? So at the first day, somebody's in somebody's in your facility and you're talking to them or their family, that information is going to be very different. You're going to talk to them about what is going to happen, as opposed to the last day when they're going out on discharge, you're going to have different information. So honing in on what part of that is important, right? So, what part of that is important? Do we need funding? Do we need time? Do we just need to educate, right? And so keeping this idea of this kind of open conversation continuing, right? That this person is going to hear about TR again. It may not be for me, but they're going to hear about TR again. So how can I kind of keep them interested and keep them wanting more? I wish I was in that section. So this actually comes from business literature. So in pitching ideas, my former colleague who's now out in Arizona, Susan Purrington, she was here for a couple of semesters. Now she's out in northern Arizona. She actually pitched an idea at this like mega entrepreneurs thing, right? So they have these competitions where you go in and it's like Shark Tank, right? And you go in and you're pitching it. If you look up in business, you will find pitching ideas. There are literally hundreds of thousands of articles that come up in the business. If you're doing research in a library, you're doing research on what are those things called? They're search engines, right? Yeah, but the ones in the library that look at the articles. As you would expect, most are in business, marketing, and entrepreneur publications. Don't let this repel you. We are a business, and we have to, it's like wearing those two hats, right? It's like, I am going to talk the quality of life angle, but I also have to understand that financially life and also understand what a business person is, right? So healthcare is business, and we need to be at the table. Don't let that stop you. And can I also this is my, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but I probably will. But can we stop saying this about ourselves? I heard this conversation the other day. I heard this conversation constantly, where a rec therapist said, well, I had to do math. And that's just hard. And I'm a rec therapist, and I don't want to do math. And I didn't go, I went to school, so I didn't have to do math. Right? I went to school, I became a rec therapist, and I want to know math. You know what you're openly admitting? You're not that smart. Right? That's what the person that's listening to you hears. Right? So I'm talking to a doctor, I don't know science. Well, you know enough, right? Don't discount yourself. And there's two men in here, and I'm not. Women do it a lot. With this is like that's our full-time job, to just tell everybody how we are not as great as they think we are. Right? So people come up to you and go, "Oh, you're so wonderful. I love this. I love this." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not." And I have to spend 10 minutes talking to that person, and 2 minutes I'm like, "Oh, everyone in my house hates them." Right? Which is a true story, but except my dog.
Yeah, that's right.
That's okay. Some days I don't like it around my house. And I never like those stupid words. Okay. So, in 2016, Business West article on entrepreneurship highlighted the world's largest idea jam. This is the thing that Susan did, is idea jam, where young people with ideas pitch their ideas in a bracket style competition. So like March Madness for ideas. Right? Those folks are not discounting what they're doing. They have a very set period of time. These things happen all over the world. They're Tucson, Miami, New York. Susan went to the one in Phoenix, I think it was. Universities all over the world. Can you imagine if we had that? If we designed March Madness. But this is what I want to do. I want to design March Madness for all the therapists and see how far we as rec therapists get, right? So, they'll say, oh, and you just listen back and forth, have these conversations and do these pitching, and then the administrators go, oh, you advance and you advance. I want to bet you the majority of time a rec therapist would win that competition. Right? I bet you if they really listen to us, right? So can you imagine what we would come up with? So what you want to do is gather your intelligence, what you're proposing and how does it benefit the listener, your audience analysis. And then what you want to end up doing is developing not an elevator speech, but a subway speech, right? From one stop to the other, a longer pitch, because you're going to take those things in your pitches and you're going to swap them around, right? So if I have more, if people want more, I can give them more. If they want less, I can stop. So we want to have backup sources, we want to have research, and again, this is where our field is short, is that evidence-based practice. Jackie and Jason and another faculty member who's in outdoor education are actually now starting. Jackie and Jason are very focused on evidence-based practice. I'm very focused on getting our budget in on time right now. But they're very focused on evidence-based practice at the moment. And they're designing a program. They're going to do some evidence-based practice program, birding as a therapeutic exercise. So, and guess what? Our president is a biologist. And guess what his area of expertise is? Ornithology, right? So we're going to put a feeding ground. We have a clinic that speech pathology uses. We're pulling speech pathology in to use some of their clinic folks so that they'll come out and see birds. We're talking to the president. They're talking to the president. They're doing all this kind of stuff to try to get this program off the ground, and they're going to do it with evidence-based practice. So the birding is secondary. Really, they're going to try to develop this idea of evidence-based practice. And then one of the things that they want to do, I'm bragging on them right now. One of the things that they really want to do is next year come to NYSTRA and be able to have a formula where people say, okay, I went to this session. Now, how can I use this? How can I use these aspects of evidence-based practice? So it's a really cool kind of thing to do. But they are really developing. I don't know. I listened to. They came to my office the other day to talk to me about dead birds.
It's like that, but it's.
It's funny.
They came into your office to talk about dead birds.
They came to my office to talk about dead birds, and I'll be very honest with you. Wasn't all that interested in talking about dead birds, but they made it. They said, you know what? This is going to be a very front-facing thing. We're going to be able to attract new majors. That's my gig right now, attracting new majors. So they immediately, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's get, so, call the dean and talk to him. And then I was able to, move it up on the ladder. So we want to do our research, but we also want to be short and sweet. We want to be succinct. And it's about timing. And I'm gonna say something that might seem a little, and please, it's not meant to be crass or anything, but I have just been really interested in how, if you've walked downtown at all, most every window has something about the Ukraine, these businesses. And I don't know that they're I'm sure there are people that they're, that's a horrible thing and they're trying to bring attention to it, but they're also using it a little bit to pull you in, right? Here's all these sunflowers, here's these t-shirts, here all these things. That kind of pulls you in. So connecting to something current, we have the pandemic. Right? Everybody knows what it's like to have social isolation. Yep. That now becomes my pitch for a lot of things that I do. We're talking about social isolation. Isolation. Why do I say isolation? Right? We just in Cortland got the money for a new community center. It's actually in a restored corset factory building. It's actually beautiful, and it's got industrial lights and all that kind of stuff. So that I know the way we pitched that, the way people talked about that was really about bringing people back together. Right? And that is what got to people. We need X amount of dollars to bring people back together. And here, and our director of aging is just amazing. She's like, here are all the things that happened during COVID. And they did a survey and they asked people, do you feel more or less depressed? I mean, it was a very small, simple survey, but it was beautiful. And it's not about you. That's why I have a hard time. It's not about you. It's about the person listening. So checking yourself every so often to say, okay, am I just talking so that I can listen to how great our field is, or am I talking to educate that person, or am I meeting that person's needs? And so being able to stop and ask the person if they have questions and all those kinds of things is very important. Don't be a proud parent. Article said, an entrepreneur describes those of us who are passionate about our ideas like proud parents bragging about our kids. You get consumed by your own stories and you don't watch for cues from your listener. Right? I've already lost this person. And so key points, listeners don't want too much. We want a couple of nuggets of gold. So in the case of the new senior center, we want a couple of statistics about social isolation, yeah. God, why can't I just say that word today? And what is done for mental health and physical health for older adults, right? So and talking about the fact that this one really got to me. We actually found that our Meals on Wheels folks, because we're delivering to people who usually went downtown to get their meal as well. Our Meals on Wheels folks had spent longer on the route because people were talking to them. So like if you can get these people out of their house and down there, then you don't have to pay that guy to drive around as much. Which I think is just like, I never thought of that, but somebody else thought, right? So we want to get a couple little nuggets. One nugget's too few, but all the nuggets are too many, right? For this listener, what's most important? For this listener, is it about numbers, or is it about the human aspect? Or for this person, my pitch to a parent is much different than my pitch to an administrator. What does this person want, right? So when I'm talking to prospective parents that are bringing their kids to Portland, I'm talking about, what does every parent want for their kid? You don't want it for your kid, you want it for yourself. Let's be honest.
A good job
And move out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Can they make a living so they move out, right? We have a 14-year-old that lives in our house every day. We gotta get the job skills, right? So that's what I talked about. When I talk to administrators, when I'm talking about the fact that right now we don't have a lot of majors, right? But I start talking about the fact that we are able to provide general education courses, and we're able to provide a minor that's very, very popular. We get a lot of people in biology coming to our outdoor education minor. And that our online TR program is booming, right? I tailor that. Parents don't really care that much about my numbers, but they do care about whether or not their child is doing a job. So what nuggets are most important? What's most important to that person? Tactics may vary depending on generations. So millennials have a very finely tuned BS meter for marketing. They don't like marketing. They don't like people marketing to them, right? So for millennials, we want to be authentic, right? We want to talk about what's in it for them, and we want to talk about real people. So right now, one of the things we're doing with our, they're just marketing, administration, our admissions folks, is getting them to understand more about our major, right? Getting them to understand those kinds of things. And so we had a meeting and they wanted to know more. And so we started putting them in touch with our alumni in different parts so they can literally talk. Because I can talk all day about our alumni and I can tell stories, but when that person tells that story, it's much more valuable. So we want to be authentic. We want to include their friends. This is why this is important. This is important to your generation. We want to have content online about products and services. QR codes. Rob and I went to lunch yesterday and I said, remember the first time that you went to a restaurant, and this was pre-pandemic, where somebody said, we have a menu online. You remember, is anybody,
Yeah.
and I kind of was a little annoyed, right?
Yeah.
But now QR codes are just it, right? You don't get a menu anymore, you just scan your phone and look on your phone. You want to have those kinds of things to back up the things that you want to say. And then be on social media. You really, really, really need to get onto social media if you're not on social media. And I said this morning, in the meeting this morning, and I kind of got people kind of got their feathers ruffled a little bit, but Facebook is stupid. I'm talking as 18-year-old or 20-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Facebook is stupid. Twitter is stupid. If my mom is on it, I don't want to be on it, right? Right? So TikTok and all those kinds of things. But if you need to market to those folks, if you're trying to figure out how to get to parents, if you work in long-term care and you want to get to the children of different people, social media is a great way to do it. And it's also a great way to educate others. ATRA's February. I don't know how many of you went on ATRA's website or Facebook page during the month of February. Almost every day they had a question about, one of them, which was one of my absolute favorite ones, was who influenced you to get in this career? And and how did they do that, right? And so people would be posting that. Those are things that you should be doing as a department. Just, this is the therapeutic recreation department in X hospital, and these are the things we're doing. This is a picture of what we're doing. We have a picture of everybody outside blowing bubbles. What are we working on? We're working on respiratory health. We're working on socialization. Having that below what you're doing, right? Cuba Medical just really ticked me off that this was not rec, but I'm learning to live with it. Cuba Medical, I was at one of their dock-in box, the Instacare or whatever it's called, and they had this big sign for people with COPD to have a harmonica group. Is that not brilliant? That's just brilliant. So having those kinds of things, yes, you're playing the harmonica, and they had it up there, and it wasn't rec, but they said, join our harmonica group, and then it's a community group, and then all the benefits of playing the harmonica. I don't have COPD, but I want it now, so I can do now. But those kinds of things are things that are very easy on social media that you can continue to do. Every 5 minutes for 3 minutes. Potential mishaps. Your pitch is the appetizer. Just give them enough that they want to know more. This Black Enterprise in 2016 had an article, and one of the things that they said was that as you're pitching, these are some things that you might think about. You don't want to commercialize your product too much. You don't want them to think that you're trying to sell them snake oil or whatever. But they had these ideas. This one I love. Talk about your competitors and how your product is different. How are we different? Right? Because a lot of times, and I've done this myself, is when somebody says to me, what's your job? I say, I'm a rec therapist, and they go, what do you do? I go, I work alongside of PTs and OTs using recreation as a treatment modality, right? And so I kind of, they go, oh, PT, OT. Yeah. But how are we different? So then that person, if I don't want that person to walk away and think that this is exactly the same as PT and OT. So, and so when I'm talking to individuals, a lot of times I'll talk about the fact that we provide meaning to the things that people do. So I use my mom. My mom is her entire life has just been klutz. Right? She's fallen off ladders and she's broken legs. She's done all this stuff. She got hit by a car and she broke her leg in 27 places. Oh, shattered her elbow. Put a 4.5-inch dent into the guy's windshield. Oh, right, and then rolled off the back of the car. So I mean, she was pretty messed up. right? And the first thing they did is they operated on her and everything, and then they put her in a wheelchair, and she had to have her foot out at a 90-degree. At the time, I was going to go back to grad school. I was working for my dad in a grocery store. I was trying to make a lot of money to go back to grad school. And my dad said, move back in with us, and I will pay you what I was going to pay you in the store to take care of you. I said, sure. How hard can it be to move back in with your parents when you're 25?
Very. With 2 kids, it's even worse.
So I moved back in with my parents, and my mom, she had to have her leg out at a 90-degree angle, and she had, but her elbow, and I still can't understand what they did, but they basically moved some muscles and they got rid of some of the bone, and so her elbow, moving her elbow, she had to relearn that, right? So we would go to PT, and they'd go, Kathy, raise your arm. Boring. Put it down. Raise your, I mean, at first it was like, you know, that, raise your arm, put it down, raise your arm. I mean, and I typically when I'm talking about it, I do this, and I say, how long can you do this? And then I said to my mom, hey, why don't you knit anymore? You used to knit when we were kids, why don't you knit anymore? Well, yes, kids got busy and I didn't have time and da-da-da-da-da, and I said, okay, great. I said, do you like knitting? Yeah, love it. So we went to the Michaels, we got the yarn, we got the thing, we got the little book with the patterns in it, brought it home, and mom started knitting. And she started doing this. And she said, this is how my mom does it. Damn it! And pulls out the rope, right? So she's knitting, pulls out the rope. And then she started to get a little depressed. She's sitting in bed. This is 6 months of her leg having to be at 93. So she's getting depressed. People are coming. People were so nice to us. They brought us food. And my mom goes, I just feel so bad because I don't have anything to contribute. She made these little washcloths to do your dishes. Everyone who came in the house, they drop off their food, they go in to visit my mom would give them a washcloth. She'd talk to them about it, and then, right? And then she'd go, I feel so good. Right? Meaning attached to it. Then we go back to physical therapy, and the physical therapist, Mindy, would go, Kathy, you were just really doing great. And I'd be like, yeah, because she's getting rec therapy on the side. Right? And so we want to talk about how our product is different. How are we different than OT? We complement them, but we also get people that quality of life, right? So, and then, especially millennials, they want to know that they have a purpose in life, right? They want to know that they're doing something to advance the world. So what problem are you solving in our world?
Happy and engaged in your life.
Sitting in front of the TV is not great for our seniors.
No, it's really.
And so we're meeting that need, right? Substance use disorder. Right? What problem am I solving? There's no greater problem in our country right now, I don't think, than opioids and reading a fascinating book about, it's called Undoing Drugs. And it's a fascinating book right now about the crisis in America. We're going to give people coping skills, right? We're going to help people understand. And then this one, does it bring joy? We found this article written in 2016, but as I'm looking at this and redoing some stuff and the pandemic is happening, isn't that something that we've all been thinking about, right? Does it bring joy? Does it, we want people to get out, we want people, anxiety is another big thing I've been using lately. I've been talking about anxiety a lot and how recreation can help with anxiety. Don't pick the brain of the person you're pitching to, so you don't want to say to them, hey, how should I better communicate with people like you? You're just pitching to them. You don't get anything from them, you're just giving them information. Timing. Don't pitch at the reception. Meaning, oh, I'm in a social situation with somebody and I know I want to talk to them about TR, so I'm going to go pitch to them in a social situation. A few years ago, I had gym membership and I had a big long break in my day. So I would go over and work out at the gym and then re-shower and go back to work. And I was in the bathroom completely naked and get in the locker room and just about ready to get in the shower. And the student came in and goes, "Can I talk to you about my test?" Oh my God. And I go, "No." We had a whole conversation later on that day about timing. That was not the time to ask me about your test, right? The viability is the students, the authors focus on sales, but traction and momentum. So if you're focusing on whatever it is you're doing, but you want to make sure that you're getting some momentum there and you're able to, again, continue that conversation. Potential mishaps, don't start with credentials. I'm a certified therapeutic recreation specialist that works in LTM, you know, blah, 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 blah. I work in OTPT, you know, speech, but all those kinds of things. You don't want to start with your credentials, right? And don't focus on competition. This is why we're better than PT. We are better than PT, but tell them why, right? Tell them what we do and let them make that decision. This is the first conversation, not the last, even if the next conversation is not with you. So here's some suggested starts. We're going to talk a little bit more about these. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. We have a lot of people that come into our facility and then they come back because they don't have the coping skills. So I'm thinking that the solution should be leisure education. And here's what leisure education is. And this is how leisure education can help. Why my solution is better, right? I'm going to attach meaning. So one of the things that I really think that we don't talk about enough in our field is how we understand everybody, right? We understand the PTs, the OTs, the social workers. We're a holistic profession. And so talking to individuals and say, here's why my solution is better. Yeah, we have we have issues in our agencies about depression. So there's a statistic about people with spinal cord injury and the amount of time that they do activities in isolation, right? And then the percentage of depression for that group, right? So yeah, we have PTs and OTs in speech, and they all talk about the aspect that person needs, you know, fine motor skill, gross motor skill, all these kinds of things. But rec, I can put it into context to give you a better life, right? So here's why I'm better than everybody else. Here's my solution, and here's why I've been working my whole life to do this. You want a new program? This is the program I want. This is why I want this program. Here's why I'm working my entire life to do this. I don't know how many administrators I would work with, but it'd be worth a shot. Don't be boring. Your core pitch should be about 15 seconds. And so you want to check your reactions. Is your listener engaged? You may go more than 15 seconds if they are very engaged. Believe in your message, be confident, and defer to your listener and be brief. Don't tell them all the things that we're not. Nobody gives me any credit. Recreation is really important, but nobody thinks our presentation, I hate that. Nobody thinks our field needs it. They just don't know about it. It's likened to, and you've all been in this situation where somebody says, none of the therapists do this. None of the nurses do this. And you've got somebody in the room doing it that very second, right? When you say to a nurse or a group of nurses, none of your nurses do this, But you got you're talking to 3 people who actually do it, you know, none of them transform. You got 3 people that actually do. So you're making sure that, that you're confident, right? And that you're not placing blame. 2 parts of a pitch. Here's what I know how to do. This is what RT is. This is what I do as an RT. So instead of talking about our whole field, a day in the life of you. I just got done with this and this client, and this is what I was doing with this client. That tangible thing can be something to hold on to. Here's what I know how to do to work for you. If you're talking to them, what is a viable example for them on how TR can help them or their loved one, their facility, or their community? This is why you need that program. This is why we need that program. Right here. These are the reasons. Right? Giving them a viable example. Our competitor down the road is using this program, and these are the results they're having. So how do you start out? And you all know this. These are the 2 best websites probably to go to about therapeutic recreation or recreation therapy or whatever you want to call us. NCTRC has an amazing amount of materials and things that that are very helpful. And let me just give you a little hint. They want to get rid of them, right? They want, and if you ever go to a conference and you're there at the last day with the NCTRC, just go over there. Can I have all these? And you can take all of them. They'll be like, yeah, no, we'll carry them back. They'll probably do that this time with the pens that don't work, but we're going to be obtaining, maintaining the value of CTR's credential. So they're typically looking at information for employers. So if I'm looking for information for my administration, this is where I'm going to go with NCTRC. ATRA, they have an online store. So you can buy some materials they have. They're a little less free with giving stuff away, and I understand. But they're about promoting the profession and bringing people in, and they're also about educating clientele. So these 2 places are excellent places to go. NCTRC main page, which you've all been to. Choose the publications and forms, and you're going to scroll down, and you're going to see CTRS professional profile brochure, diversity and inclusion data, salary and wages, salary data for Canadians, fast facts, recertification, reinvest, set yourself apart, and employ excellence. That marketing material is things that you can use, and you can use their statistics. You know, salary and wages, I use that a lot for students and those kinds of things, and, you know, in the job available. And then the diversity and inclusion data, looking at clients and what kinds of things that they have, right? And this brochure is, this one, the employee excellence is so good. It's focused on why employers should hire those with a CTRS credential. I'm advocating for a position in my department. I'm advocating for another rec therapist. This is why we should hire a rec therapist. Well, my cousin's uncle's brother has a PE degree and needs a job. No, this is why you should employ a rec therapist. These are the things that a rec therapist can do. And I'm sure Bob is a really nice guy, but yeah, 5 minutes left. I'm not gonna get to what I want to get to, but that's fine. ATRA main page online, they have information about rec therapists in different settings. And these are all things you can pull up information about, about recreation therapy and how to become a recreation therapist. And also the idea about our field is really important. RT month, so there's 2 months. Right? There's the International Therapeutic Recreation Month is February. And then the National Rec Month is July or June. Is it June? July. I don't work in July, so. But these are things that you can do again to market and to get information out. And I apologize because I just kind of took us a different direction and didn't talk to you a lot about the actual elevator change. But talking to your competitors and how their product is different. These are the people on my treatment team. This is what I do. Solving the world, bringing joy, but just making sure that you have these kind of starters in your pocket. Right? I used to go to NTRS or NRPA every year, and I love being in when it was at its height. There'd be like 20,000 people walking around with beads, right? And everybody would go, "What are you? What's your field or whatever?" Sometimes you get that here. It's the holiday in it, but just being able to say, "I'm a recreation therapist," and these are things. I can make this available, so I can make this available so that you can go through those steps. We were going to do it in here, and then I just got coffee, and then it all falls apart from that moment. But you can go ahead and do that and start to look through it. But really, the idea about understanding who your audience is really an important aspect. So, is there any questions, comments, concerns? Never going to another one of your sessions. It's right now, my passion in this field is mindful professionals. My passion in this field is the people that are getting the 20 and 25 and 30 year PIPs. Those are my passions because we've been working a long time and we want to keep you working for a long time. And so if you have an idea of something you want to do at a conference or you're not quite sure about it, I'm really focused on the mindful professional, and I'd love to present to people. I'd love to present with you if you've got some stuff, but just talking about that mid-career. It's probably not mid-career right now, it's probably later in the career, but I think it's really important. Our field is usually, I told our alumni office that I needed bibs because our field is full of 30-year-old women, but our field is also full of older, more seasoned, and I include myself, the salt and pepper, or the gray, or whatever. And so, what can we do to challenge you and keep you in this career? So a couple lifetimes ago, I did passion fatigue, and I'm trying to work with that. So if you have any ideas or you want to do something or something's happening at your facility, let me know and I'll help out. All right, you done?